Good Thursday morning. Thank you for joining us on Kare 11 News Now. I'm Megan McPherson. Our top story this morning, if you walk outside, you're probably going to notice hazardous air quality here in the Twin Cities. Conditions rapidly getting worse in just the last 12 hours from wildfires burning up north. The air is so bad, as you can see in this live cam here, that the Target USA Cup in Blaine is under a black flag warning, meaning crews there will evaluate the air quality and decide if games can be played every few hours. We have team coverage on this developing situation across the state. Let's start with Audrey Russo standing on the Kare 11 rooftop.
Good morning. In the light of day, it looks downright eerie out here. If you look out over Golden Valley, you can try to see the water tower. It's a little bit hazy. One thing that's very evident, though, is the sun. I don't know quite what you can see through the camera, but with my own two eyes, it looks just like an orange, kind of obstructed ball in the sky. So kind of creepy to see out here this morning. Now, these could be some of the worst air quality conditions that the Twin Cities has ever experienced. And these conditions are likely to continue through Friday. Now, the wildfire in the Boundary Waters is what's to blame here. But when you compare the situation to what we saw last year during wildfire season with those blazes up deeper into Canada, state officials say that that closer proximity we have now makes all the difference.
The smoke has less distance to go, and so it disperses less. And so that definitely increases the odds of thicker smoke, especially if it's a large wildfire.
Thicker smoke, more fine particles in the air, giving us air quality maps that look like this one, maroon being the danger zone here. Now, in past alerts, we've specifically cautioned kids, people with asthma, and older adults to stay inside and kind of take it easy. But doctors are saying this is a whole new level, with everyone facing potential for symptoms like itchy, irritated nose, shortness of breath, wheezing. I know I'm feeling a little bit of chest tightness right now, and I've kind of been in and out of the building, every half hour for the last 2 hours. Now, this is a really big reason why events left and right are getting canceled. Golf courses, community gatherings, people are just canceling, saying stay inside, stay safe. We're keeping an eye on the Aquatennial. We've reached out to the organizers of that event in Minneapolis to see what their plan is. We do know that the Target USA Cup today has postponed some of their games to make sure that the athletes stay safe. But it's really, if you don't have to go outside, really don't do it. Don't make any unnecessary trips. And if you do need to travel outside for any reason, bring an N95 with you just in case, lightheadedness comes on you quickly. It's good to cover your face and your nose. Back to you.
Yeah.
Right now, crews are battling 15 fires. 4 of them are inside the Boundary Waters canoe area. Let's take a look at where those fires are burning in the areas now under evacuation orders. All of these areas in red have been evacuated. That includes parts of Lake and St. Louis counties. Officials say the wildfires have now burned more than 54 square miles in the Boundary Waters, with the Forest Service calling these the most widespread and extreme fire conditions the area has seen in more than 20 years. Firefighters continue to work under hot, dry, and windy conditions with help from the National Guard. As you can see in this video, Guard members working to drop water and get those fires under control. Meantime, thousands have been evacuated from the Boundary Waters, including 2 YMCA camper groups who were in the Canadian backcountry.
The last 24 hours are pretty rough. Just as a parent, and you can hear, your kids are safe, or they're hunkered down and they're out of harm's way, but you don't really know.
Governor Walz and the Executive Council extending a peacetime emergency to keep those troops around through the fall, a sign officials expect that it could take months to get these wildfires under control. And the situation in northern Minnesota is deteriorating fast, forcing people to be evacuated. Our Morgan Wolf is in an evacuation zone with a closer look.
Unfortunately, a lot of these fires have merged together, making larger fires, which has made it more challenging to try and knock them down. And talk about challenging, the smoke has complicated the view for pilots as they're trying to drop the water onto these fires here. So we heard from fire officials that they are hoping to see some more federal assistance come to Minnesota, mentioning that maybe firefighters from Alaska or other states could be joining in this battle. And they told me that they think this is the busiest wildfire season they have seen in July, but they are holding out to see if this could be one of the worst on record. In Ely, I'm Morgan Wolf. Back to you.
And it's the same story up in Canada right now, with officials tracking more than 100 wildfires across the country. Take a look at your screen. You can see the areas being hit the hardest: Ontario, Quebec, and Western Canada. The smoke from the flames creating hazy skies across the country. This is video from Toronto, which had the worst air quality in the world yesterday. Right now, Toronto ranks third. Officials say conditions are expected to gradually get better throughout the day. And a little further south, Niagara Falls, unrecognizable in the haze. This is from the Canadian side of the falls. Smoke so thick that you can even see the water rushing down. You can't even see the water rushing down the side of the cliff. And as we deal with wildfires and bad air quality here down south, parts of Texas are bracing for another day of flash flood warnings. Already, torrential rain has triggered multiple flash flood emergencies. A news crew in San Antonio captured this upsetting video of a group of deer being carried away by the rushing water. Meanwhile, officials say neighborhoods in nearby Uvalde are only accessible by helicopter after they got around 20 inches of rain over the last 72 hours. And then take a look at this terrifying video of a tornado touching down and moving past drivers during yesterday's morning commute in San Antonio. You can see flashes of light and what looks like debris swirling in the sky. The woman who shot this video says the tornado got bigger after it passed over the highway. Scary situation. Developing right now, Ramsey County officials are suing the Department of Homeland Security to conduct their own investigation into this incident during Operation Metro Surge. This is video from January of ICE agents detaining Chung-Lee Scott Thao, dragging him outside in his underwear in frigid temperatures. Ramsey County officials say Thao is a U.S. citizen and he didn't have any warrants.
I don't think there's a question that there was a law broken. I mean, at the minimum, this is conduct on becoming of an officer of the court. At a maximum, it's some form of false imprisonment or kidnapping. It all depends on what the intent was, what the motive was, what they did during that hour.
In a statement, Homeland Security called the lawsuit a political stunt and say the agents were executing a warrant looking for a sexual predator, and Tao refused to be fingerprinted or have his face scanned, so they held him for what they call the safety of the public. This morning, families are demanding answers as 2 Lionel Lakes prison units are without air conditioning.
It seems like the inmates in there are not being treated like they're humans, and these are human beings. These are loved ones that we have. These are fellow people that will be back out in our community. So how are we treating them?
Yeah, not a good time for this issue. The Department of Corrections says that their air conditioning system is too small to cool the entire prison effectively in this extreme heat. They say they're using large industrial fans to improve circulation. DOC says 336 inmates are impacted, a little less than a third of the prison's population. The U.S. military launched an intensified wave of attacks against Iran Wednesday, the third series of strikes in 24 hours. Iranian officials said at least 7 military members died in one attack. Tonight, President Trump is set to deliver a rare primetime address to the nation after reversing course on a plan to temporarily halt vehicle stops by immigration officials. That's following 2 fatal shootings by ICE. NBC's Alice Barr has the latest from Washington.
Hi there. President Trump is set to focus in part on the 2020 election in his speech tonight, according to a source familiar, at a time when U.S. strikes expanded into areas around Iran's capital, Tehran, raising new questions for many Americans about the war and its increasing costs. President Trump is preparing to address the nation tonight in a moment when the war with Iran is heating back up. The U.S. struck Iranian military targets twice on Wednesday, and Iranian state media said Iran fired back against U.S. bases in Kuwait and Bahrain. The Pentagon hasn't commented on any potential damage. The president is threatening more devastating attacks to Iranian infrastructure could be coming.
They do want to settle. We'll find out whether or not we settle with them or we just finish it off.
But a source familiar with tonight's primetime speech says it will focus at least in part on election integrity and some of the administration's findings on President Trump's 2020 election loss to Joe Biden.
It's really, really big news. And our country has to shape up
5 people familiar with the work tell NBC News a White House task force has gathered information about potential issues, including involving voting machines, though multiple court rulings, audits, and reviews have repeatedly found no evidence of widespread voter fraud. That as President Trump reversed the Department of Homeland Security's pause of ICE traffic stops, calling them one of ICE's most important and effective crime-fighting tools. The agency had ordered a temporary halt in vehicle stops following fatal shootings by ICE of 2 men in less than a week, neither of whom was the intended target for arrest. The White House border czar said it was always meant to be a short-term pause.
Just to make sure that the agents out there on these operations have the vehicle stop training.
He argued that training is good and efficient. In one positive sign out of Iran, President Trump announced an American citizen wrongfully held since late 2024 was allowed to leave the country safely. The president said the United States appreciates the gesture of goodwill by Iran. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
Stick with us. More news and weather is coming up after the break.